Hi everyone. Today I'm joined with Claire Donnellan, Director at Customer Centric Consulting. Thank you so much for joining me, Claire.
Hi, and good to be here with you, Jessica.
Would you mind starting just by introducing yourself briefly?
Okay, so I'm Claire. I've been in the aviation industry for most of my career, and I'm thrilled to be a part of talking about how airports and airlines are working together and can work together more over this exciting transition after the interesting couple of years that we've had.
To say the least. So Claire will be participating at the upcoming Aviation Festival Asia, which will be starting at the end of February. So today we're just going to have a brief chat about Claire's participation, specialist topic in the region, and just generally around what to expect. So firstly, Asia's been a hot topic of conversation lately. Could you tell me why you think it's such an exciting region for aviation at the moment?
Yeah, Asia is well placed. It's obviously a transit point and also as far away as Australia, included in the Asia results often. And at the moment, the adoption of tech and innovation in the space is huge. So if you look at things like the urban mobility, Asia's got dense population, they've got traffic congestion. That's something that obviously is a space that they're surging forward in. There's the space around AI. I'm sure over the Christmas break, many of us were playing with Chat GPT. I mean, there's many facets to AI, as we all know, but Asia has obviously been one of the leaders in that space, not to mention the metaverse as a whole, which is now a space we're hearing a lot about, particularly in the airline area where they talk to their customers and in the airport space where they're putting in their digital twins to make sure that their assets are efficient. So it's an exciting time.
That's wonderful. So what do you see as some of the key trends that our audience could expect to hear a lot about at this year's event?
I think some of the ones I've just mentioned, but also think one of the areas is the sustainability angle. As we know, across Europe, there's been a move in some countries to look at not allowing travel for certain distances and changing transport types. There's a transition, obviously, to electronic where possible. So I think that will be interesting. And also the inclusive practices. I noticed there's a touch on that at this conference, which I think is important as people want to travel, everybody wants to travel, and the more accessible we can make that, the more people have the ability to do that as comfortably as possible. Obviously, there's more to do in that space, but it's definitely an interesting area.
Yeah, I think that's a very broad umbrella and something that deserves a lot of time. So you're going to be moderating and interviewing a couple of different sessions for us. Are you able to give our audience some insight into what to expect from these? Maybe starting with the interview with Adelaide Airport, which was to do with inter-industry data sharing and passenger experience.
Yeah, so the interview will focus on what airports are finding, so what they've been doing to fill in the gaps in data and how they've been forging ahead with that and the benefits that's been realizing for the customer and their stakeholders, and obviously the revenue opportunities they're deriving from that. It'll also cover the benefits of sharing more data with airlines and how it's mutually beneficial, particularly around gaps for airlines in their customer journey as everybody works to fill the gaps in the communication that they're having. Um, I think one of the areas that I think we're all realizing is customers they're engaged, they're expecting certain ways of being communicated to in certain channels. And I think the more that we merge and align in those spaces across both industries, there'll be a real benefit for everybody, not just customers, not just airports, and not just airlines, be everybody. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I also understand that you're moderating a panel um, titled Placing Data Analysis at the Center of Passenger Experience Strategies within APAC Airports. And I believe that's SriLankan Airlines, Munich Airport, Adelaide Airport. So could you give me some insight into that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this panel. I've been to many conferences. I think this is the first one I've been on where you've had airlines and airports talking about a customer topic, which I'm very passionate about. What I'm finding is all sides of the industry realize that the customer is the same customer for everybody, and the customers are basically driving what the expectations are. So what the panel will discuss is how best to derive this data to serve it up to the customer in the best form and the most accurate form, and then how it can also build into the strategies for airlines and airports, because they're very different, and then obviously for the brokers in the middle of that. So obviously there's a place for associations like the IATAs, ICAOs, your ACIs. There's also a place for the larger data aggregators in the business. Some of them I think will be at your conference as well.
That's great. That's one I'm personally looking forward to. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. So aside from your area, there are several big tracks running at the event, sort of including retail, sustainability. What are you looking forward to at the festival, aside from your own sessions?
I did have a look at this when we first discussed how we were going to run this particular section of your conference, and I actually think what's going to be most interesting for everybody, and it's a challenge that everybody has, is around there's so much data, and I know we've talked about it for a long time, but it's still there. It's getting better, but there's more data. So how are people managing all those volumes of data? How are they making sure there's integrity with it? It's validated. How are they garnering actionable insights from that? How are they sharing it safely? Because obviously there's a lot of regulation around privacy. We've had the cyber issues recently, and I noticed there's a bit on that at this conference. I think that will be very interesting for people. And I think the other elements of it that I personally will find, and those that are passionate about design thinking, there's a lot of sessions around how data should be used to invest in things that matter, and what's defined as what matters for your company. So is it the inclusive travel like you and I just spoke about before? Is it responsible revenue streams? Is it sustainability? What is it? Like, how are you using the data to do that? But ultimately with the people that are going to be experiencing your service, which is the end user, the customer at the end of the day. So I think there's a lot there for everybody.
That sounds great. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, and hopefully there'll be some interesting. You'll walk away with some interesting answers to those questions that you've just posed. So just zooming out for a second, how do you think the event contributes to the industry's ecosystem as a whole?
I think when I looked at how this was merging both worlds, I really find that the background that we touched on earlier. So obviously I've spent, 15 years in airlines and 10 years in airports, and they run so differently, but so much the same, all work in the same space. So I think the benefit of what you're doing here is reminding everybody that we've got some big brains coming to this conference. We've iterated, we've innovated over the last, many, many years. This is a real opportunity to seek what's the next thing. Is it an iteration of what we're already doing, or is it a massive innovation again to just really drive things forward? And there's, like we touched on before, that whole sustainability thing is huge. This data thing, it's huge. The whole drive for everyone to have equitable access. And lastly, what you and I talked about before, that whole the urban mobility, but that's customers telling us they want and need that. But that's also governments, and it's trying to remove congestion on roads. It's a whole merging of worlds at the moment. And I think the foresight for your company to think to put all of these elements together will be really beneficial for not just industry, but the people wanting to participate and reap the rewards of it at the end of the day.
That's wonderful. Wow, I'm really looking forward to seeing some of your sessions and meeting you in person at the event.
Yes, me too. I'm very excited to see people.